A man submerged in a tank of liquid, breathing it in, not drowning, breathing, his lungs filling with fluid instead of air, and his body surviving. This is not science fiction. This has already happened to human beings, and the biology behind it will completely rewrite everything you thought you knew about the limits of life. Imagine the single most fundamental rule of human survival. You need air to breathe. Lungs pull oxygen from gas. That is the deal. That is the contract biology made with you the moment you were born. But what if that rule was never actually a rule? What if it was just a habit? Because scattered across the natural world, and now inside certain research laboratories, there are living systems that shatter this assumption completely. And once you understand the mechanism, you will never look at breathing the same way again. Let us start with what is actually happening in your lungs right now. Your lungs are not extracting oxygen from air because it is air. They are extracting it because oxygen molecules are present and because your lung tissue creates a concentration gradient that pulls those molecules across a membrane and into your blood. The medium transporting the oxygen, that is almost irrelevant to the chemistry. This one detail changes everything. In 1966, a scientist named Leland Clark conducted one of the most unsettling experiments in the history of biology. He took a mouse, placed it inside a chamber filled with a liquid called perfluorocarbon, and watched the mouse breathe it. Actually, breathe liquid. In and out. The mouse survived. Clark had discovered that perfluorocarbon liquid, when saturated with oxygen, could deliver enough of that oxygen to living tissue to sustain life. The scientific community was stunned. The public was barely told. Perfluorocarbons are synthetic compounds made almost entirely of carbon and fluorine atoms. They have an extraordinary ability to dissolve gases, including oxygen, at concentrations far higher than water can manage. When you breathe air, your lungs extract roughly 21% oxygen from the gas around you. When a lung is filled with oxygenated perfluorocarbon liquid, that same tissue can absorb oxygen dissolved directly in the fluid. The lungs still work, the blood still carries the oxygen, the heart still pumps, the organism still lives. But here is where it gets even more extraordinary. Nature had already figured this out long before Clark touched a laboratory mouse. Deep-sea creatures living under crushing pressure, where dissolved oxygen in water is their only option, have evolved respiratory systems optimized for extracting gas molecules from liquid environments. The gill systems of certain deep-water fish operate with an efficiency that puts human lungs to shame. Specialized protein structures called hemocyanins, used by some mollusks and crustaceans, bind oxygen directly from liquid with remarkable effectiveness. The ocean has been running this experiment for hundreds of millions of years. And right now, if you are finding this as mind-bending as we do, hit that like button and subscribe. We go deep into the science that most channels never touch. Every subscriber tells us to keep making these. Now back to humans. Because this is where things become genuinely radical. Liquid breathing in humans has not just been theorized, it has been tested in clinical settings. In the 1990s, researchers conducted trials using partial liquid ventilation on premature infants with severely underdeveloped lungs. The lungs of these infants could not handle the mechanical stress of normal air ventilation. Perfluorocarbon liquid was gently introduced. It reduced surface tension inside the lung tissue, allowed the fragile alveoli to expand without tearing, and delivered oxygen simultaneously. Some of those infants survived, who otherwise would not have. The military has also quietly funded research into liquid breathing for a very specific and alarming reason. At extreme depths underwater, human lungs cannot withstand the pressure differential between compressed air and surrounding water. Liquid breathing eliminates that differential entirely. A diver whose lungs are filled with oxygenated liquid experiences no pressure gradient across the lung wall. They could theoretically descend to depths that would crush any conventional diver. The liquid is incompressible. The body becomes, in a sense, pressure-proof. But why do not we simply do this? What is stopping liquid breathing from becoming a medical standard or a diving technology? The answer is carbon dioxide. Breathing is a two-way process. You bring oxygen in and you push carbon dioxide out. Perfluorocarbon liquid can carry carbon dioxide, but it does so far less efficiently than it carries oxygen. Getting the carbon dioxide out of a liquid breathing lung requires either very high flow rates of liquid cycling through the lungs, which demands enormous mechanical assistance, or chemical solutions that strip the carbon dioxide from the fluid outside the body. Both approaches are complex. Both have been partially solved in research settings. Neither is ready for casual use. There is also the question of what happens when you transition back to air. The liquid must be removed from the lungs before air breathing can resume. Perfluorocarbon evaporates faster than water and can be exhaled over time, but the process is uncomfortable and carries risks of its own. Researchers are currently working on formulations that evaporate more rapidly and more safely. The deeper implication here is something philosophers of biology almost never discuss openly: the boundary between aquatic life and land life. The evolutionary leap that happened roughly 375 million years ago, when vertebrates first crawled onto shore, was fundamentally a transition in the medium of oxygen delivery, from liquid to gas. And now, in the span of about 60 years of focused research, human science has quietly begun to reverse that transition on demand. We can breathe liquid. We have done it. Not perfectly, not safely enough for daily life yet. But the mechanism works because the mechanism was always there inside us, waiting for the right fluid. The creatures in the deep ocean never needed to make that transition. They stayed in the liquid world and optimized for it, and they have quietly been pointing us back to a biological truth we abandoned hundreds of millions of years ago. If this kind of deep science leaves your mind spinning, you are in exactly the right place. Subscribe right now and ring that notification bell. We release new videos that pull apart the most extraordinary biological and physical realities the universe contains. Do not miss what comes next.